Check one, check two. Are we there? Trying to get our Instagram up and running. I think you can hear me. Let's get started. I wonder if my buttons are still working. Let's see. I feel like I've been gone forever. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. Hello. Oh, my gosh. Here I am back in the regular space station. Happy birthday, Wendy. Goodbye and so long, 2024, a year of tussle and turmoil as we go into chaos mode, I suppose, over the next little bit. And here we go. That's right. Tara Dublin will be joining us second hour, which is lovely of her because she'd been taking a break and now she's found her footing again, I suppose, and has plenty to say, I have no doubt. Cliff Schechter is in Europe, so it's just the two of us right now, ladies and gentlemen. It's just us. And I'm glad because we get to say goodbye to Jimmy Carter together. Jimmy Carter was one of the sweetest human beings to have ever lived. I swear it's like a tug and pull between him and Henry Winkler. And he was, by all measures, oddly enough, and this is, I think, part of the reason why he became president, was he checked all the boxes for Republicans in a lot of ways, if you think about it. He was a naval man. He was a farmer. He was a Southerner. He had the drawl. There was a lot about him that made him a great crossover vote for a lot of people to get him into the presidency. The problem was he was a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat as far as policies went, and is the first president to put solar panels on top of the White House. And don't get me started on how if we'd have just left him up there. Oh, that's right. Thank you, David. I should have brought this up, but I will remind me later to to keep this. I'll make reference to that later. It is truly the greatest live stream of all, but we'll get to that in a moment because we are celebrating the life of Jimmy Carter. When you live to be 100, nobody has to warn you. Everybody can just be amazed. If you were ornery, they can be just impressed that you made it this long. And if you're lovely, it is a double win in that regard. In that you have a long and storied life, and he was a beautiful person, and just his post presidency, I think, made everybody aware of what we could have had. And when Reagan came in and took the solar panels off of the White House, off the top of the White House, as a spite, it was the, I mean, I don't know, maybe there were some other presidents that had a similar, spitefulness to their predecessor, but none that were so obvious and egregious and cosmetic as well as impactful as taking down those solar panels as a screw this kind of an attitude. Interestingly enough, after he had made a deal with the Iranians, Reagan, to get the hostages back, and we entered a phase in America's history where we were sort of moving towards getting out from under OPEC and all that. We recognized the crisis that being under the thumb of oil producing companies was going to cause long term. We were having to be friends with some very unfriendly people. The British dealt with this with the Shah and with Iran and all that stuff. And so, it was all murky and about to get worse. And so in an attempt to look down, sorry, my overhead light is on like an idiot. In an attempt to look down the road and say, hey, wait a second, maybe there's a remedy to this that we can start preparing for. We can get out from under, right? We know this is going to be, it's already a problem and it's going to get worse. And relying on this part of the world for our energy is a mistake. It's a stupid idea. Don't believe me? Ask China right now. They import 80 to 85% of their energy, even though they have all this coal. Unfortunately, they don't know how to do flood abatement, and they dug a bunch of brand new coal mines, and they all filled with water. Anyways, yes, Bush Sr. was an oil guy. Reagan was this kind of resource capitalist, or a believer in it, that it was a way to cement control or eliminate control. You could argue that he was like, one of the ways you suffocate a country is with the resource curse long term. So his strategy may have been long term that we just make sure that all the oil comes from there, because if that's what they focus on, they won't focus on anything else. They won't innovate. They won't create the computers of the future or any of that stuff. We'll do that, and they can just pump black goo out of the ground, and we'll use it to fuel cars. That would be the most generous interpretation of if Reagan had, I'm making this up in my head. I've never heard that Reagan ever had this idea, but that's the argument for the other side of this. But the straight ahead argument, and the one that makes the most sense, is look, we're in this oil addiction cycle, and we got to start making off ramps. We're stuck in this freeway with no offering. We got to start making breakaways. We got to start building up geothermal. We need to build more nuclear plants. We need to whatever. But we also need to look at renewables, things that you never ever have to dig up and refine. The sunlight, water, wind, these things are always happening. And if you can find a way to use things that are always happening without wrecking them, and that would be more tidal stuff, then you to make energy, then you owe it to yourself to at least do a, I don't know, maybe 20% of your energy draw, right? And so Jimmy Carter was a pivot president. This is also a thing. He was a pivotal president, whether he wanted to be or not, because of the period of time we were entering into. America was at a crossroads, and we could have gone one way and we went the other. And the issue is that there wasn't going to be, the road wasn't going to continue straight ahead the way it was. There was always going to be a choice, and the choice was going to be ugly no matter what it was. And anybody in the middle of the choice circle where the split happens is going to get the blame for all of it. Okay? That's what happened to Carter. And in many ways, it's what happened to Biden. Right? So, and that will prove out, I have no doubt. Right? All I want Biden at this point to do is live past the Trump presidency, so a decent Democrat or a relatively decent, by comparison, Republican maybe can do his funeral. And I think it's a blessing in many ways that Carter will have his funeral under Biden instead of some slapdash bullshit exercise by the Trump administration, right? They did name an attack submarine after Jimmy Carter. And Trump will get a bilge ship. I have no idea. I have no idea what kind of, maybe a series of tugboats. I don't know. Whatever. That's the best he'll get. But the point is that Jimmy Carter himself was at a point in history, the late 70s, the last 4 years of the 70s. America, because of technology and because of the ubiquity of cars and all that kind of stuff, was at a fork in the road. And there was one fork that's really wide and one that's just a variant. And we took the one that required less effort in that regard, and that was Reagan. And Reagan kept things going as best he could in that direction, while at the same time they did oil exploration. It's why he was trying to get Anwar. His idea was that we'll just produce oil here and eventually outpace them, and that the renewables thing is a waste of time. Now, it was 1979, 1980, then into 1982 and 84, 86. The technology, had Reagan just left those solar panels on the White House and just kept things going in that area, would have cost the American taxpayer next to nothing to continue to support. And we did have some stuff, but not anywhere near what Carter would have done. This is, if they had created, just let this roll, if they had just let the National Institute for Science and or the Science Foundation and all these things continue to put out grants at the scale that Jimmy Carter was looking at, the advances we're seeing in solar panels now, as far as their efficiency and cheapness and the available energy and stuff, we would have been there in 1991. And if that had happened, where would we have been now with solar? If we'd have just stuck with it the way Jimmy Carter was trying to direct the country towards. If you'd have just stuck with it, right? And that is true of all scientific exploration and especially when it's a variance in old pollution forms of energy and industrialization, moving towards cleaner, smarter, more efficient, more ecologically ethical ways of doing it. It's always going to take more work, because the clean and the quick and dirty is always harder than the clean and complete, right? hence the minimum viable product concept. But this was, you were 11 in 1976. I was 6 in 1976. But I think we have probably overlapping memories of this. Now, I mean, there's a myriad of things that Reagan, in many ways, did exactly what he was basically the prototype for Trumpism. In a bunch of different ways. Like, on the one hand, he was an asshole and loved just shutting stuff down because it was linked to his predecessor shutting things down just because they were Democratic plans. And then all of a sudden he caused deflationary pressure on the overall economy and freaked out, and there was a stock market crash, or a huge dip compared to, I guess, 2008. It wasn't that crash, but it was damn close, and for that time was very scary. And in this particular time period, Reagan himself would do the same thing Trump did, which was promise all this shit, do all of his stuff. It didn't work. It caused a lot of problems for the same reason everybody was saying, like, this is going to be a problem. Don't do that. He did it anyways. And then what did he do? And what does he do? He has to, he got Democrats elected because of it. And then he had to go to Democrats for the solution. And the solution looked a lot like the stuff that Jimmy Carter was trying to implement. Now, Jimmy Carter also had better jobs numbers in his first term, in his only term, than Trump did. Even not counting for COVID, not counting for the loss of jobs during COVID, Carter, triples, I think, Trump's jobs numbers, even with the OPEC oil crisis and all that kind of stuff. Now, I don't know. There's a few people in here like, I was -4. I was 4 years old, 13. Yeah. Everybody, how old were you in the chat in 1978, so like midway through the Carter presidency? What do you think? Let's go into let me check in with the chat, by the way, since this is Hal Sparks Megaworldwide, the greatest live stream in the history of live streams. Look at that. 12, 17, 15, there you go. 20, -3, 8, 17, 5 years old, 16, went to service in 76. Wow. 17, 10, 13, 22. Right on, Norma. 24. Yeah, so you guys, some of you folks may have even voted for Carter. That's fantastic. So the -10. So a lot of you may have, maybe what you know about Carter, you learned because of how he was mocked in some cases, or, he was an affable guy, so he was easy to make fun of in some ways. And, but there were a lot of things that happened during his presidency, again, that these were pivotal things that curiously line up with a lot of what happened to Biden, or what seemed to happen to Biden. For example, the Camp David Accords happened, which was the first agreement between Arab and Israeli settlers, Israeli citizens rather. He had Anwar Sadat and Menachem Begin come to the White House. Remember that? And had this first big sit down because tensions were very high, and the drive to do that was caused by a lot of violence. Very similar to the kind of animosity that we're seeing under Biden during that same period of time. Also, just like Russia invades Ukraine under Biden, the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan under Jimmy Carter. Brezhnev orders this attack on Afghanistan, and it was about oil supplies at the time. I mean, honestly. And all of this was about the lubricant for economics in the world. And Carter's response to it, besides what he could do in terms of the, the geopolitical strategy and using the State Department and maybe military stuff here and there, protecting shipments and all the stuff that they had to do, was to sit back and look at this and go, there's got to be a way around this too. Like, why do we even need this stuff past the amount that we can produce ourselves? Hence the push towards solar and the real first advances in the country. And during that time, by the way, my dad was working for the state of Kentucky, but on the side as an architect, he had his own company, and he built two of the first fully solar homes in the United States, if not the first two, and both of them were in Kentucky, and both of them were built into the side of hills to benefit from the insulation of the ground itself. And they were like these half cave houses. They're kind of amazing. I need to get my dad to send pictures of those houses so I can show you. He's got to have some pictures because we were there. And everybody knows that that's where I went, where I played that early AI-ish ELIZA computer program. Let's see if I can show you that. Yeah. ELIZA was this, this guy had a computer in his house, and it was called ELIZA, and it was based on like psychotherapy. And one second, let me shut this down. It was based on this kind of ask and answer. Let's see if I can bring this up. Yeah. Because I think they actually have it still online. But this is, I mean, let me show you how far this goes back. I played this, it's not really a computer game. It's just a natural language response computer program that it would take whatever you said and turn it into a question and ask you to go deeper on it. And then at the end of whatever you said, it would take the last couple of things you said and formulate a question out of that. And you could talk to this shrink program. This was early AI, right? And yes, it's a bit of a psych test, but it was really meant to be a psych, like a chat bot that did psychology specifically. You used it on your Apple IIe. Yeah, I think I want to say this guy had an Apple, and that's where it was programmed on, because I knew how to use it because of the school. We had one at my neighbor had one because his dad was the chairman of the school board, and Apple gave him one to try to get these computers in the schools and get them to, add these to the school program in Kentucky, and he kept one for himself. Thank God, or I wouldn't have had my experience with computers that I've had. But that said, that was for me, that was in 1978, about that, right in the middle of the Carter administration, okay? At the same time, and if you've never played it, I think there's a website. Hold on. What is that? Language program. I think there's. You can still go see it online. Yeah, Eliza, first type of community interaction. Geeks for Geeks. Yeah, it was developed in 1966 by Joseph Weizenbaum, and yeah. Let's see if there's a. I'm going to see if there's a link where you can still use it. Today is a rudimentary. Get out of here! Stop giving me ads. I'll find it. It's going to drive me crazy. Yeah. So, and who has actually? I didn't use a computer until 1986. I probably first used a computer in 1977, something like that. Specifically, let's see. Yeah. Okay. So, it's a. Here you go. Let me copy this. I'm gonna put the link in the chat right now, so you guys can post it in the. Fullerton has a version of it. ELIZA is it's Rogerian psychotherapy. You just type in a question, concerns, and hit return, and ELIZA will answer it for you. And let's see, comms. This would be, yeah, that's it. That's what it looks like. It's super simple. It's just this panel, input, text. Let's see. Hi, Eliza. I'm Hal. How are you today? What would you like to discuss? Our dear friend Jimmy Carter passed away at the age of 100. Perhaps your love for your friend worries you. Okay, this is an early rudimentary. No. Are you sure? Yes. Are you sure? See, it can't do much with a single. Are you sure? Yes, I am sure. There is nothing worrisome about loving a past friend. Yeah. Do you believe it is normal to be sure? There is nothing worrisome about loving a past friend. So this, see how this will just bump back to what you're saying? Anyways, I played on this for hours when I was a kid at this house that my dad built, that was a solar house built in Kentucky on, as part of programs that Jimmy Carter put in place. I'm not sure that I'm not sure. If you're, I'm sure. It's the one thing I'm sure about. So this, let's just take a road, like a trip down memory lane in the 70s with young little Hal Sparks, and during the Carter administration. And one of the things that stands out, of course, was like the possibility of stagflation in the dollar and oil production and OPEC and them basically ganging up, and that the potential for the United States and then the potential for a European Union was basically born out of the idea that OPEC was going to gang up on the world and hold the leash of all the power and business in the world. And I mean, looking back at the damage that was done simply by not just seeing that was a threat. I mean, look at right now. Look at even during Trump's presidency when Russia and Saudi Arabia were having this pissing fight that drove down gas prices, and everybody thought it was just between the two of them, when in reality they were using the strategy of working together to drive down the price of oil so much that American oil companies that were using their money for natural gas exploration during the early days of fracking, it would help shut that down. That's what they were trying to do. They tried multiple times. And that was to keep us all reliant on them as a source. And Carter was one of the people that saw ahead past that and was like, we have to mitigate our use of energy and clean it up. Not just so that we can, wean ourselves off of the, sources of foreign oil that were a threat to our national security, but also out of care for the environment. Man was a peanut farmer. Remember when Republicans, when the word conservation and conservative seemed somehow linked? And now it's just like, of course I want the environment good. I'm a hunter. Like, oh, I see. So we probably should get rid of lead bullets so that, we're not scattering the landscape, like the landscape with lead bullets, so that deer grazing in the area eventually develop lead poisoning, and we have all these kind of myriad health problems eating the meat from. Nah, fuck that. So one of the things that OPEC recognized was that Reagan would be a lot more friendly to them, and so, knowing that the Republican Party was leaning in that direction and would continue the status quo and undo a lot of the conservation efforts that Carter was putting in place and the like, some of which Reagan tried to stop and couldn't, very much like what will happen with Biden and Trump, that OPEC made a strategic choice to attack the United States using economic pressure and the one thing that they had that we didn't, which was oil. And so they tormented effectively the Carter administration with long gas lines and disgruntled people and all the stories of people shooting each other, in line for gas or siphoning gas out of other people's cars. That was when locked gas caps, or when your gas tank cover had a button inside the car, so that you had to pull that to open it up so people couldn't pry it off and get your gas out without actually having to, you'd notice, because they'd actually have to destroy the thing to get in it, right? And so what did that mean? What happened then? Smash the window, pull the thing, and then you go. So everybody took it one step up, and it didn't quite work for that. But that was where that came from. That came from the 70s. That was a thing where cars, that was an added feature that people wanted on their cars because of that shit. So, the long lines and, dogged his presidency because our enemies in the world wanted it that way. Because there was a recognition after World War II that you don't F with the United States on a military level. And even after Vietnam, because again, Vietnam's a lot like Afghanistan. It wasn't that we couldn't have just won in a war of attrition in that situation. The problem was we were trying to separate a political system that was trying to take over from the people that were there. So you can't just wipe everybody out. A war of attrition is fairly easy. You just bomb the fucking place and you kill everybody. And if you're not willing to do that, or that's not the purpose, then get out. Does that make sense? We left Vietnam not because we couldn't have destroyed the place entirely. Of course we could have, but that wasn't the point in the first place. And it was a terrible, it became a Gordian knot because of it. And in the case of, these other countries, what they recognized was that we were probably not going to go to war in a bunch of these places except on a minor level. Think post 6 Day War, support for Israel, or those kind of things. But we weren't going to go all in, and they knew this, and they knew we certainly wouldn't do it for all this bullshit talk from Jimmy Dore and TYT and all this stuff that America's an imperialist society. We fucking aren't. If we were, we wouldn't have any of these problems. We'd have a brand new set. We'd have other problems, and we wouldn't be us. We'd be the Russians. But the point is, most of our military bases in the world, the vast majority of them that aren't directly protecting an area like Okinawa or in South Korea or something like that, are protecting shipping lanes. That's what they're largely there for, making sure that piracy is kept down. That's why we're like the policemen of the world. Everybody talks about that. We kind of are. We're more like the traffic cops of the world. Because we're really talking about the roads. So during that, the late 70s, it's kind of new to American, the American voter wasn't sort of aware of the geopolitical ramifications of their car. So weird. It all kind of ties together. Let me see. This is 72? I'm never going to be able to play this on the air, so I'm going to have to, because I'll get a copyright strike. I just know it. But the Osmonds, I'm going to do this Osmond song at the Ultimate Jam Night. I've just decided I have to. And you'll see why if you listen to it. You'll go, what, an Osmond song? What are you talking about? I can probably play 12 seconds of it, and it won't be a problem. But I'll show you something. You'll see why I think I could do it or whatever. But fair use. This is an Osmond song. Okay, it's called Crazy Horses. Listen to the sort of top of this. That's Donny Osmond. You hear that riff? Oh my God. That's nuts. Now, I'm not going to play any more of it because I will get right. It's totally badass. It makes no sense with the radio. It's such a great song. Here's the thing. When the Osmonds put this song out in 1972, they played in, it got, I guess, banned in certain countries because they thought Crazy Horses was about heroin, because the ride the white horse and all that kind of stuff. Okay. It's not. You know what the song is about? It's about car pollution. It's about, the Crazy Horses are like the horsepower of a car. And it's about how they're choking the air with choking the sky with the bad air that they create and the dust of their feet and blah, blah, blah. But the song is about pollution, because that's what the 70s were largely about. This is 1972. So 4 years later, we're in the middle of, we're at the beginning of the Carter presidency, and it starts to ramp up. Yes, our Earth Day started in 72. You're absolutely, I think that's right. So there was this movement towards that direction, and it was the American people, and I think people largely of the world, were starting to recognize that this is, it was a, hold on one second, there we go. It was a big deal, and we had to do something about it. And so you could see where, how I'm talking about, like, we've been talking lately about how the trajectory of Trump and Musk butting heads is coming, and neither one of them can avoid it, because it's just on its way. There's this crisscross between what they want, and that includes the H-1B visa stuff, which, by the way, is printing gold. I look forward to the clips this afternoon, because they're going to, like, the MAGA faithful are flipping the F out about what, Trump and the H-1B visas. And we'll get to that when Tara's on, because I want to discuss that a little bit, because there was one thing that hit me about the whole H-1B visa thing that I was just like, oh my God, this is fantastic. So, but in 1976, we're moving towards, people starting to be aware of what pollution is doing, aware of the environmental impact, but not necessarily the geopolitical. Yes, lead and gasoline. Another thing that Jimmy Carter did that saved millions of lives, period. This is the same thing with, like, Biden taking lead out of pipes. It's very similar. So many parallels. But as we're getting into the Carter administration, there's this lead up towards, it wasn't just like city people choked with fumes that were starting to care about, give a hoot, don't pollute. The old Indian who was an Italian standing by the side of the road as people threw trash out of their window. Pollution on all fronts was the awareness of it was becoming, ubiquitous throughout the country. But there was still this geopolitical aspect that people didn't quite grasp, where the oil came from. Unless you were, again, drinking from the fire hose of news, which was a trickle back then, because you only had 3 news sites and your local newspaper. Maybe you got the New York Times or the Washington Post, something like that. But the rest of the time, you just got, the Frankfurt Herald, right? So he comes in right at this hinge point where people are recognizing the need to deal with pollution on a massive scale. It's all over the media. People are also dealing with it in their lives. We're recognizing the health impacts of it. And yet there is this disconnect from the fact that we're also geopolitically tied to these really gnarly countries that don't mean us well. Why didn't they use a real Native American? Because it was the 70s. And all the Native Americans they found didn't look like it. I don't know. Is it like there wasn't this branding movement where race is the primary category? That is another thing. That's another, because it was the 70s. Let's just say that. You know what I mean? It's like, why didn't they use real women in Shakespeare productions? Back when he was alive. That's what they did. We move forward. That's the whole point. We move forward. That's what we're trying to do. Now, there are some elements of the 70s and stuff that are going to come back, and I'm looking forward to them. And this is also one of the things I want to make a point about. There have been most of the hinge moments that Republicans have dealt with have either been some sort of financial click in that they, were responsible for around, say Carter, leaves, and then Reagan comes in and he's trying to give more weight to the Dow than it's ever had, and it falls out. Like the bottom falls out from under it for a little while because they put too much pressure on it. The substructure hadn't built up yet. They didn't wean themselves into it or build. Can you wean in? I guess so. They didn't, ease their way into it. And so it created a shock to the system. And under, I guess, you could argue that maybe Bush 1 had to deal with the first Iraq war and the invasion by Saddam Hussein into Kuwait and those kind of things. And geopolitically, Bush having 9/11, But most of the time under Democrats, it has a lot to do with them cleaning up the mess the Republican before them made, and then dealing with something that's been building in the body politic that needs a real solution, right? That it builds and builds and builds until somebody's got to actually do something to solve this shit. And Democrats often are the ones that get elected to take care of that thing. And then when it's solved, everybody seems to recede back into just this kind of ping pong mentality of us versus them, right and wrong, good and evil kind of simplicity. But when a complex issue needs to be dealt with, you got to have a Democrat. And so that's what Carter sought to do. And the Republicans especially, and certainly what would be the Reagan Republicans, who were the kind of like, I don't know, Nerf versions of maggots at the time, said, no way, we're not fixing this issue. We're making too much money off of it, and we're benefiting from the fear around it, so we would like it to remain broken. And so Reagan famously negotiated with the Iranians to undermine the Carter presidency, while OPEC, specifically it's like Saudi Arabia, Iran, and Russia, and was Russia in it at the time? I mean, they were the Soviet Union, so they were producing part of it. But regardless, the Middle Eastern countries were all colluding basically with, as kind of like a generalized, our enemy is the United States. And they were all on that team, even if they had their own disagreements. And that manipulation of, and collusion with Reagan undermined the Carter presidency and created this myth that he was a shitty president, when in fact he was being sabotaged by people outside the country and within. And you could tell that his character and his caring, think how differently the world would have been if he'd had gotten a second term. If Reagan had maybe, well, first of all, Reagan wouldn't have gotten shot more than likely, but he, let's say he did become president, 4 years after that in 84/85. And, and Carter had 8 years and had helped this roll up into solar and, and other environmental concerns that we all had, got kind of a baseline foundation for that was strong enough that you couldn't, undermine it. And then, the conservatives would have built on top of that instead of spending their time chipping away at it. Does that make sense? Right. So Carter, good guy, actively undermined and vilified and turned into a cartoon after his presidency. And anybody with an ounce of soul can see that in the actions he took after his presidency. But a lot of people don't know this story, and I've mentioned it before. But just to give an example of what is the legend of Jimmy Carter, he was well, he had a lot of jobs over his life, including being in the Navy and a peanut farmer and the like. But let's hear. I'll show you this article on it. This is the young. If he had a slightly different nose, he's Captain America. But here's little blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jimmy Carter as a naval officer, and so he worked on diesel electric submarines. He began working with the Naval Reactors branch of the U.S. Atomic Energy Commission, the Navy's nuclear submarine program, in 1952. Rickover was infamous in the Navy for demanding near absolute perfection from those working in his command. His expectations of the 28-year-old Carter were no different. The young lieutenant was being groomed as the engineering officer for the nuclear plant aboard the USS Seawolf, the Navy's second nuclear sub. Now, this is one of the reasons why a sub was named after him. And why we named an attack sub after Jimmy Carter. It's because he fucking worked on one. A lot. So, as the engineering officer, he was Scotty, and was designing the training program for its nuclear enlisted personnel. The Navy's work in developing the first nuclear submarine, the USS Nautilus, meant that Rickover and Carter had access to the latest and greatest and top secret nuclear technology. So when Canada's Chalk River nuclear facility experienced a power surge that damaged its reactor, the U.S. sent Carter and his team, he was one of the few people in the world who could do it, fuel rods at the research reactor experienced a partial meltdown after the power surge. It ruptured the reactor and flooded the facility's basement with radioactive water, rendering the reactor core unusable. In 2015, in his 2015 autobiography, A Full Life, Reflections at 90, Carter described the incident as preparation for repairing the reactor. They built an exact replica of the reactor, true to the last detail except the actual nuclear material, obviously, on a nearby tennis court to practice and track their progress. Carter and his 22 other team members were separated into teams of 3 and lowered into the reactor for 90-second intervals to clean the site. It was estimated that a minute and a half was the maximum time humans could be exposed to the levels of radiation present in the area. It was still too much, especially by today's standards. The future president had radioactive urine for months after the cleanup. Jimmy Carter pissed nuclear waste for months after this. And again, think about what a good dude this is. He ran this program, created this system where they all had a specific job, and they had 90 seconds to do it in. And then they would all work in teams of 3, and they would roll them out, and you're like 90 seconds out. And at 86 seconds, they start pulling them up, right? And so they really probably had a minute true work time, lowered in, lowered out, and their exposure to it. And so you've got a minute to do 10 things and get the fuck out. And the more, if you miss something, if you don't do something, right, it means that you're going to have to send everybody back in another loop. So they had to make these minutes so efficient. I'm tearing up. It's going to make me cry. Like this, who cries over a nuclear replica on a tennis court? This guy. But the fact that he did this with his team, and they ran these specific roles, and all the guys on this team knew that they were getting exposed, by the way, to horrible amounts of radiation to try and do this, to stop this meltdown and save lives. And they just went in there time and time again. They went in, they got pulled out. In another, I think it was full 8 teams or something like that, went in order, and then they had to go back in. Right? And knowing full well, they're just, at that time, they're getting blasted with radiation. And think about, first of all, what we know about radioactive, radiation poisoning now, their fears about it at the time, the long-lasting implications of it that we now know exist, because, again, he had cancer twice, and that more than likely this was tied to it. Although just being that old and living that long, is reason enough to have something show up. But God damn. And then, yeah, Jimmy said, why not me? Absolutely. Didn't even question it. Just went and did the thing. Yeah, he lived to 100 years old. It's such a life. And look at this dude, by the way. There's one other aspect of him of Jimmy Carter that was boss as fuck. And one of the things that he was just nice. This is the first example of, ladies and gentlemen, of nice guy syndrome, that America is often referred to as a she, and girls like dating jerks, and they always friend zone the good ones. This was what they did. They friend zoned Jimmy Carter and went with Reagan. They always date the asshole, right? That's the that was one of the first jokes I ever wrote. Like I won't do it in front of Jimmy Carter. I'll tell the joke later. Somebody remind me, tell the joke later. All right, and I'll do it then because he's too good a guy to to swear in front of him. But like such like a sweet and dedicated man, and maybe too much so. This is one of those situations where I often joke about like humble kills, that humility can be a weapon against you. Because had he seized on his own self-worth a little more and not been a humble man of Christ the way he was, there's an argument that he could have put Reagan in his place a couple of times, but he was such a good man, he wouldn't step over that line. And he trusted us as the American people, and obviously I wasn't old enough to vote at the time, to show up and do the right thing. And we let him down. He never let us down. So anyways, there's Lieutenant James Earl Jimmy Carter Jr. on the USS K-1 in the Navy. Look at this dude on a fucking periscope, and like here's the whatever the guy running whatever piece of gears right in front of him. I can't tell from there or whatever, but all his engineering team, mixed race, just a good dude. Like it's just all around, just shrugged it off. Everything that was a big drag for everybody else was never a drag for Jimmy Carter. Just be a good person, treat people nice. Jimmy Carter is the reason why when our grumpy atheists in the chat, bless their hearts, start dropping bombs about Christianity being awful and all that kind of stuff, all that does is give quarter to the people who use it as a mask for their awfulness and denigrate people with genuine faith like Jimmy Carter who use it to guide their life in a good way. It never hurts the ones who are faking. As a matter of fact, they almost feel like some level of pride in it. But the good ones are the only ones that hurts. Just saying. Deal with it how you will. It's okay. Atheist catching strays today. Nope, not all of them. Just the grumpy ones. Because it comes up around, like, this is who I think of when I talk about, like, genuine Christians or genuine Christian belief. Not these mix and match Old Testament assholes that we have running around, who are with the old covenant, but pretending they are with the new covenant. That's another conversation for another time, and we've had it before. But let me go back to this, and then I want to show you the other thing. That was, where is it? See if I can find a picture of this. Do they have the one? Yeah. No, they don't have it in this one. Okay, I got to find this one picture to show you of him. And everybody, by the way, hit the like, share the show, et cetera, all the stuff I forget to say. So we now know that Willie Nelson smoked pot with Carter's kid in the White House, and nobody minds on our side anyways. I have to show you guys this whole, yeah. So when he was campaigning in 1976, this is the shirt at one point. And let me tell you something, as a guy who wears concert shirts as a signal to the people I like, when you're like walking around, you're like, I want you guys to know what bands I like. You know, like for example, a shirt like this, for example, King's X, Gretchen Goes to Nebraska, an album that belongs in your in your collection in every format it's available in. And the song Summerland is officially my favorite song in the world. And there's a song on there. Well, we'll get into that at another time. I could go on forever. But this is Gretchen Goes to Nebraska, King's X. Like when I'm wearing a shirt like that and you have an overshirt or a jacket, you tend to like push it back so people know you can see the whole thing. So they know, you know, that you're not hiding it or whatever. And look how he's got his shirt back. He knows the cameras are there. Jimmy Carter's no dummy. He absolutely framed this out. See that? And that's him, you know, touring around with the Allman Brothers and bringing their music. And Tara Dublin is in the background, and I think it's a wonderful thing. So give me 1 second, and I'm going to bring her in because I missed her sorely during this time. And let's jump right in because she's here, and I don't want to waste a moment. While we're celebrating the lovely, there you go, James Carter, James Earl Jr., by the way, he is indeed. Hello, Tara Dublin, who does indeed rock. There she is.
Hi.
Look at you with your Sound of Settling T-shirt.
It's my Hanukkah present to myself.
That was awesome. That's great.
Thank you, Zazzle.com.
Yeah, Zazzle's pretty great. I'm a big fan of Teespring, and I also, once we get you up and running with whatever stream you put together, you got to get a Twitch store because their merch quality is very high. It lasts through a lot of dryer cycles, and that's what matters. Excellent. That's the hard part. But hi, welcome.
Hi.
Almost
Hi.
Happy New Year, and the
almost.
like.
And
almost.
I wanted to end the year with you because we didn't have a proper closure together because of things, and which it feels like I have lived 7 lives in this month alone.
Sure. So,
you know, and I think everyone can relate to that. But the reason we got off track in the first place was all the way back on December 8th, which is like 17 years ago.
Yeah.
I was in Vancouver, BC, because I got to go to the final Taylor Swift Eras Tour show.
Oh, damn.
And that's why that Monday I didn't do your show.
That's a good excuse.
I was sleeping off the Taylor Swiftness.
Sure.
It was, and that was, and we'll get to the political stuff. But I just kind of wanted to catch up with everybody for a sec. I got to go. I didn't think I was going to get to go at all, and I'm a Swiftie over 50. I have been a Swiftie fan for 10 years, so I'm not a Swiftie come lately. I've been in the trenches for a minute, so
right.
But I didn't think I was going to get to go to the Eras Tour at all. And I had kind of resigned myself to the fact. And I'd also, I had tried. I had been one of those people who sat on the computer for 2 days and tried to get tickets and couldn't. And all of the things. And I watched the movie a bunch of times. And friends of mine went to had tickets for the Vancouver, BC show. And they paid I don't know how much for 400 level nosebleeds behind the stage, partially obstructed, the second to last show. And I was like, no, I'm not going to, I can't do that. And I had gotten a new passport because the advice was to get a new passport before they stopped letting Jews have passports, I guess. And so,
wow.
You know, here's Maxine. If y'all missed Maxine, she's right here.
Hi, Maxine.
She has no idea. They're like, what's this now?
Look, that's awesome.
Hi. Her ass is literally in my face right now. Cat owners, you can relate. Anyway,
you totally understand.
So, but anyway, I got a new passport, and it happened to arrive early, or like the second week of November, and I posted about it on Facebook because the first thing I did when I got the passport was see just how expensive one ticket to any of the Vancouver Taylor Swift shows would have been. And it was crazy. It was ridiculous. It was prohibitive, and it was not going to happen. And then magically, somehow, the Facebook algorithm did me a good solid for once in a blue moon. And my friend Chris Willman from Variety happened to see my post from November 19th saying, oh well, no breaking in my new passport with Taylor Swift. Shucky darn, I'll live. The sun will come up tomorrow, blah, 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 blah. He saw that on December the 3rd and said, oh, well, I might be able to help out with that. And I was like, oh, what now? Oh, what now?
Wow.
And he writes for Variety. He was covering the final show on the Eras tour for Variety. He had a +1, and of all of the people he knows in the entire world, he gave it to me.
Aw.
And so I know. And so for what people were paying $8,000 for, I got for free. And so I met him up there. It was my first time in Vancouver, BC, and another friend of mine hooked me up with a hotel room. And so my friends went the night before and were up in the nosebleeds. I was in the by the B stage in the 13th row, and Swifties out there, 13 is a significant number.
I agree.
Right. And so, and then during the Gracie Adams opening set, so I was sitting with Chris Woolman from Variety and my friend Rob Sheffield, who writes for Rolling Stone. I don't know if you know Rob, but everybody should read both of them. And Rob wrote a great book about Taylor Swift called Heartbreak is the National Anthem, and he was touring with it, and he came to Portland, and I gave him friendship bracelets, and he was still wearing them when I saw him in Vancouver, and he says he's going to wear them to the grave, which is beautiful. Anyway,
that's very sweet.
But during Gracie Abrams, the legendary Taylor Swift's legendary publicist Tree Payne came out to say hello to us, and she acted like she knew who I was, which is like, what? So we got to get this book to Taylor Swift somehow. But anyway, I was there. It was rare, and I loved it so much, and it was like. The weirdest thing about this year of 2024 was, like, I got to go to the DNC with 2 days' notice. And then I got to go to the final show on the Taylor Swift Eras Tour with, like, a handful of days' notice. Drove myself up there. Got to go see the show. It was, I had, the cathartic, hysterical crying moment when she did the final 10-minute All Too Well, when she gave away the final 22, had all of the things. And I just kept reflecting on the fact of how lucky of a human being that I am to know so many wonderful people, and it's just been the most insane up and down emotional year because like all of these things happened that were good for me personally. And and in the last month and a half, it's crazy how many nice things have happened that I felt like I couldn't celebrate because it's been a shit ass of the last 6 weeks or whatever.
Right. So,
it's been really weird. And we get great things are happening, and in the middle of this what is happening shit, and then today, right before you and I began to speak, I mean, you were talking eloquently about Jimmy Carter, and we'll get back there in a second, but E. Jean Carroll won again.
Yes.
The universe gave 2024 a last big boost for us.
Yeah.
Let's go out on a high note. Let's try to find some. I was waking up this morning. What am I going to talk to Hal about? That's positive. That matters. This matters.
Yes.
This last nail in 2024's Trump coffin, which he goes out with this stuck to him on his shoe like toilet paper. So great, good, way to go. Every chance I get to yell at Maga and say, here, congratulations, this is what you voted for, and now it's going to double stick like more to you because this is what you voted for. You can deny it all you want, but now you can't. You can't deny this because the jury keeps handing him an L. Every single time he goes back with E. Jean, he needs to stop. He needs to stop right there, and he needs to take all of his grifted Maga money and fucking give it to her. Just give it to her now because it all belongs to her. And if he keeps going back, she'll just keep getting more of it. So I'm taking that W. That's a big W for us today because we know what he is. If you want to keep loving a rapist pedophile, that's your problem. But we know what he is, and you can't say that he's not. Yeah. Here's what adjudicated rapist means. This is what it means. So you can stop with your obtuse posts on whatever social media you're using. What does it mean? What is adjudicated? It means fuck you. That's what it means. That's what it means. It means E.G. won again. That means women continue to fucking own him. That means he's still a rapist, no matter how many times you all cry. And it also means that Elon Musk fucking helped him cheat. But before we go there, let's talk about James Earl Carter Jr. Yeah. Jr. What a lovely way to serve humanity.
Right.
Jimmy Carter is the example for all of us. Every single person on this side of the dirt should look at Jimmy Carter and take something away from his life and incorporate it into their own, because you want to talk about a person who led by example. He lived he lived what, and you and I have talked about religion before, and I'm not a religious person. I'm a staunch atheist and I don't believe in anything, but I give Jimmy Carter all the space to be a devout Christian, because he lived it without hypocrisy. He gets a pass, Joe Biden gets a pass, and Stephen Colbert. That's about it for me. But Jimmy lived it, and he lived it every day until he couldn't live anymore. He lived it to his last breath, and you were like, and he beat cancer, and the man would fall down and pulverize his own face and then get right back up and keep building a house.
Right.
So you remember, like, we saw pictures of him. The man looked like he was falling apart. He had bruises and purple and blue, and he went right back and kept hammering away. So there's so many great things that you can say about Jimmy Carter. I lived in Albany, Georgia for a little bit, which is near Plains, where he was born and lived, and the Carter Center's in Atlanta, and I lived in Georgia for quite some time. And so Jimmy Carter is, you may not say a bad thing about Jimmy Carter in the state of Georgia. I believe it's state law. But one of the things when I was living in Albany, Georgia, where my older son was born, was we met, and my real estate agent, her husband was a retired Secret Service agent, and he had been for a time on Jimmy Carter's detail. Had nothing but the loveliest things to say about the entire Carter family, every single member. But what he told me was anytime Jimmy Carter had to take a commercial flight, he would walk around and shake every single person's hand on the plane to make sure that he was not disturbed during the flight, because he knew everybody would want to meet him, and that there was no chance that nobody wanted to meet him. So he would just cut them off at the pass so he could enjoy his flight and bring a book. Like in The Accidental Tourist, he would have a great big book with him so people would leave him alone. But he would go around and make sure, hello, I'm Jimmy Carter, hello, and shake everybody's hand. And everybody then had a story. Every single person on that plane had a story. I met Jimmy Carter. And I thought that was beautiful, because that's understanding humanity at a level where he met them where they were, literally.
Right.
And gave them the kindness, and then went on about his life and still continued to live by example. And we should all have been so lucky to find a Rosalind Jimmy Carter romance early in our lives. They were together for 100,000 years.
Yeah.
And right to the ends of their lives. And they kept, their vows and genuinely led by example. And in a world of Maga, everybody should be a Jimmy Carter.
Yeah. Agreed.
Right?
And I, again, there's so many parallels between the Carter presidency and the Biden presidency. Both troubled, in the case of Carter would be his troubled brother. In the case of, Biden is his troubled son. In both their cases, they spent the entirety of their presidency planting trees they would never live to sit under the shade of. Which is the sign of goodness. I mean, that's what you're trying to do. If you're, and I think a lot of us who are in, the political sphere, at least in my circle, and I will write off some of the other people who do political toilet paper for a living. The goal is to support processes that go forward, that actually create progress, so that people understand it, can fight for it, can support it, and keep pushing for it, even against adversity, so that it actually gets done. Think ACA to public option to perhaps a national health system that covers everybody. That's the goal. That's the strategy. And you got to keep on that path for a long time, and to do that work, it requires the people who write that legislation. It requires people who advocate for it, both in the extremity of it and on the baseline, middle of the road, talking cleanly about it, and people who advocate for even further past it. So maybe you get a mid zone somewhere between there, but at least everybody who's moving that forward, that's the work that has to be done. And I feel like if I can view what I've been doing on the show, and for me, it's like nailing those pieces of wood in those houses. That's the image that I feel like I want to aspire to. That's why he's an inspiring character, is that
Right.
when you're driving the nail on one more beam in this house that someone will live in one day. And
Right.
and there are a lot of programs and a lot of situations. Think of the ERA, which is not passed yet, but will eventually. Eventually, it will get there. And everybody along the way, even during the failures and the fallbacks, is responsible for making that happen. Right.
Right.
The people who both.
I'm sorry, Duke wants to hang out. So.
I'm for it. No, hey, we just lost Flora. Johnny Million lost Flora, and I gotta say real quick, if I may, he sent a message. By the way, he goes, I want to thank so many of you for your heartfelt condolences and humbling generosity. The Catcade actually reached out because of all the donations made in Flora's memory. It really helps soften the blow to know Flora inspired people to help one of the best shelters in the country. We're both going to get weepy. Yeah.
Oh, no crying. There's no crying on House Show. Okay.
But yeah, so bless you guys for doing that. Everybody in the chat room who on Saturday stood up, and those in the Chicagoland area, especially, who are like going to go make reservations and hang out at the Catcade and play Pac-Man and support kid eats is a great thing.
Great.
And yeah, it was lovely. And so cats are welcome to walk around and flirt during the whole thing. I may at some point build one of those like shelving systems where the cats can walk up the wall or whatever and just put it behind me just in case the cats decide.
I definitely want one of those for Duke and Maxine.
Yeah.
And I also want to move to a place that has stairs so they can just chase each other up and down stairs.
It's a good time.
They need that space.
Moving environment, right?
So just another reason why we need to sell the book, but we'll get there later. We'll talk about the book later. We have other things to talk about.
The Sound of Settling, everybody, buy it, period. End of story. So there we go. And we'll get there later as well. But I want to remind everybody on the regular. Also, you're watching Hal Sparks Mornings Mega Worldwide, the greatest live stream in the history of live streams. I'm Hal Sparks. That's Tara Dublin.
True.
She rocks.
Hi.
And her, you can go to TaraDublinRocks.com and you can get links to her Substack and to her book and all that kind of stuff. So now, in direct comparison, I think it's interesting that the universe plays funny games with some folks, it seems, and
it sure do.
I think right after the election, MAGA was on such a high about this because they had, and I think one of the most damaging things that has been done to Trump, honestly, is everybody telling him this bullshit about you got a mandate and it was a landslide and everybody's on your team and the country is MAGA now. Because the problem with believing that is that you stop selling, you stop explaining, you stop justifying, and you also think that your whims can automatically become policy just because you feel them. And he seems to be like last time, I guess, but in a more extreme sense because his brain is jello now, more than it was then, I guess. This seems like it's going to be a big shock to him. It seems like that around him, this fight that's happening between him and the maggots and over the H-1B visa stuff, which I'm sure you've seen, is just gonna get worse.
And he certainly doesn't like it when people refer to Elon as the president. So
or him as VP Trump.
He doesn't like sharing the spotlight. And watching the implosion, I mean, it's satisfying on one level, but also it's frustrating because it's not like we weren't warning everybody before Election Day, and we were saying that this would happen. We would tell everybody the leopards are going to turn on each other and eat each other's faces, and we said they're going to walk all over each other. And Trump's not a take one for the team guy, and so if he's going down, he's going to take anybody else down with him. And eventually, when you are an unserious person who is surrounded by unserious people, eventually all of the consequences are going to hit, and somebody's going to have to take the blame for fucking the shit up. So we're already, and you're like, he's already breaking promises that he made to the MAGA people, like he's not going to lower your grocery prices. He already said that. He's like, well, actually, that's hard. Really, dumb fuck? Tell us something we don't know.
Right.
And that's the first thing. And then all of it, oh, we're going to get rid of everybody. Wait, we can't get rid of everybody, because if we get rid of everybody, there's nobody to do these jobs. So maybe, wait, okay, we'll get rid of everybody that's here, and then we'll only bring in the good ones who can do the jobs we want them to do.
Right.
And then we'll just, everyone else is fuck you. No. And now it's fascinating to me that only now members of the Indian American community are like, wait, MAGA doesn't like us? Hello, are you white and Christian and male? No. If you're not, they don't like you. They don't. Do you serve a purpose away from where their eyes see? Great. But if you're right here, they don't want to know about you. That's why there's nobody of color except Vivek are in this cabinet, and Vivek doesn't even have a real job. That's not a real cabinet job. That's not a made-up. He's working in a made-up office, and now he's pissing people off. He's pissing off the MAGA people. So what I say is, let them eat each other, and when there are crumbs left, Democrats can come and go sweep them away and do some real shit. It's my hope, because if they're not going to step up and fight fascism before it can get into the White House, which, again, like, that's frustrating as fuck to me, and they're worried about election denialism. What does it look like? And you can't invoke the 14th Amendment. You could try. How about trying? Trying is better than just laying down and letting shit happen. Morning, Joe and Mika. So, I'm not a compliant advanced person. I don't know if you knew this about me. And I've had enough rest now to get back and be salty. So I'm saying, if you're dissatisfied and they haven't even gotten into office yet, you can actually do something about it. And I encourage the MAGA people who are mad. I don't know if they're in your chat, but if there are MAGA people who are mad, those MAGA, okay, well, hi. I'm glad to know that you're not exactly thrilled. I'm not really an I told you so person, but when it comes to this, I'm going to fucking tell you I told you so, because we have been telling you so for a long time. And I'm enjoying being right about certain things that I'm right about. The tariffs thing that we tried very hard to explain to you is coming back to bite you. And now this visa thing. Now you're mad about that. So guess what? It's only going to get worse. He's an adjudicated rapist now, and they're not going to overturn that verdict. He's not going to be able to appeal. It's not going to go his way. Would you like to not have that guy represent you because he's a shit ass who's been lying to you forever?
Right.
14th Amendment is real. The 14th Amendment is a thing that matters and should matter anyway.
Right.
And you can still call your elected members of Congress. You can still call Republicans and Democrats, or you could wait until Friday when the new Congress is sworn in and start calling all these new people and be like, do you like your new job? Did you want to keep it for more than 2 years? Because here's what. You are allowed to do that as an American citizen. Democracy is an action word, and I don't care what it looks like or sounds like. We're allowed to question the results for all that hinky shit. But if you're not going to question the results, then maybe don't want some insurrectionist shit.
Yeah.
Adderall. You know what they're going to do? They're going to snort rails of Adderall off the Resolute desk if we don't do something. That's not what it's there for.
It's fascinating to me because I'm looking at the kind of what seems to be the natural road for a lot of these things, because Trump didn't become smart and capable just because he got reelected. Nothing changed about this idiot, and maggots somehow think it does. Almost like there's an anointing that goes with the presidency, and they overlay this onto Democrats all the time. They treated us like we treated Obama like a king, or even Biden like a king. In some ways, they talk about it in these language like even if you look at the ACA, all the language like Obama shoved this down our throat. Okay, well, first of all, it went through committee. It went through a myriad of things. You had blue dog Democrats who knew they wouldn't get reelected in their state if there was a public option in it, who stripped it out and yet laid the ground for a potential for it in the future, and that was their give and take. It was a whole goddamn process, and it took a long time, and it was a fucking tooth pull. And the reason it's so dense is because it answers and gives and has so much wiggle room in it so that it could get passed, that it took a ton of work. But the perception from Republicans, lockstep MAGA, at the time Tea Partiers, was that this was forced on them, right? This is how they talk. And the problem with that is that if you believe that about what Obama did with that bill, then you believe that Trump will have the ability to do that with what he wants to do, that he can just come in there willy-nilly and just write something and it becomes law like it's a fucking, like he's the King of England, and it becomes, a part of the Constitution just because he dictates it. So instead of just another executive order that another president can knock out, and then he's got to get other stuff passed through the House and the Senate, just like every other Republican president has gotten. And the reason they haven't is because if they do, the Republicans in those states know that they will lose their seat. They know it. And so they're like, hey, asshole, you're going to cost us what tenuous control we have over the House. We got like a 2-vote majority, which is going to go away. I mean, he's already swiping people out of there that were only there because of name recognition. So if they got to run somebody fresh, unless they find some local sports star to Tommy Tuberville his way into these seats, they're kind of screwed in a bunch of these areas, especially if there's any purple to it at all, because people, right, all the people who went, what's a tariff and can I change my vote, will be the people that show up for that, the second time around to try and save their own ass. So in the House and especially in the Senate, the scariest person for him right now is Thune, because Thune looks like a fucking astronaut. He's 6'11" to 15, and he's young-ish compared to everybody else. He could be there for a long fucking time, and he clearly wants to be president.
And he's not full-on Maga.
Nope.
So
he'll do some. He wants the tax cuts that MAGA wants, but he doesn't give a rat fuck about the rest of these dumbass like Greenland or any of the stuff. Like they all want. Thune wants the comprehensive. He wanted the border bill that they could get passed to pass, and I guarantee. The Senate will send back the House's bill. They'll try to get their H1, whatever that they sent through, that were H2 something, which was their big like maggot, anti-immigration screed, which has all the anti-H1B visa stuff in it. The Senate's going to punt that shit right back, and Trump wouldn't sign it anyways. You can tell. It's fucking glorious. And so they're headed, this trajectory is unavoidable. The bullet has left the gun. The person has stepped out in front of the car. The target is where it is, and it's just, they're just in bullet time, slow-mo. They are heading to a collision, and there's no way around it. Let me show this up, and I apologize if the labels are wrong on this next. You are not Philip Ittner, but I will change that real quick. There you go.
I do have a brother named Philip, though.
Oh, so. That's close enough. All right. Let me pop this in here and put you up there. There you go.
Trump now realizes dumping Musk would doom himself. Well, bringing him aboard is what doomed him in the first place.
Right. Yeah. Too late, dumb fuck.
Legitimately. And so Putin was like, you guys are going to be butt buddies now, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, you need training wheels.
And that's correct. And Daddy Vladdy said, you guys are it's basically like the movie Step Brothers now. You're going to share a bunk bed. You're going to be best friends. You're going to be dipshits together. And Elon is going to use his Starlink fuckery to help you win. And then we're going to do some shit. So that's,
and they're going to move the couches out of the Oval Office so there's much more room for activities.
And J.D. Vance will they'll put the couches very far away, so J.D. Vance will be down the hallway playing with the couches, jumping up and down on the couches while they're doing the actual fuckery in the Oval. Yeah,
so the Vance thing, here's let me game out a possibility with you and see how you feel about this idea, because this Vance is not MAGA by any stretch. You could tell by the Laura Loomers of the world flipping the F out. You got Ann Coulter.
I'm enjoying this, by the way. I'm enjoying this.
And it's not going to end.
This is a lovely moment. This is all the stuff we knew would happen.
Right. And so by the time they get around to fucking with us, they're going to be exhausted, because they're going to have to clean out the rhinos and then the ultra MAGA. Like, they've got two groups that they've got to broom after immigrants that they round up, maybe and maybe not, mostly in Texas. After they're done fucking up the entire economy of Texas, what do you think the appetite, where do you think, you always talk about when a president comes in, they have a certain amount of political capital after winning that they get to spend, right? They get this kind of like free check to go like, all right, go for your big shit. You won. We'll let you have this one. But then we start fighting with you. after they fuck up the entire economy of Texas, what do you think the political appetite amongst maggots in general? And then, by the way, parallel tariffing China so much, except on shit that Ivanka makes, purses and whatever the fuck she's selling, curtains and napkins with, IT on them.
Really shitty clothes that end up at Ross.
Right. Exactly. Stuff you'll find in that the United States will buy up in bulk and send to Africa in aid packages.
Right, and then it ends up polluting the ocean. It's just horrible. So what do I think? I mean, if you're talking
well, let me
about
play this out for you. Let me play this out is what my point is. So Trump is already dough-headed and a mess. And I've only been wrong twice. That was that he was going to run again when he did, and that he would win again because I had more faith in the American voter. And that's where I'm more Carter than anyone else in my predictions. But I also, just looking at his health and how fast these kind of wind downs happen, and the stress of the presidency, which last time he didn't give a shit. He was basically a sociopath. But this time, it's his entire legacy's on the line. He can't run again. He's, you can tell he's still freaking the F out about everybody. He's still mad about the campaign, even though he won. Right. So he's still.
No, they're all still mad, which is weird.
Right. It's very weird. So that stress messes with you. Right? Day to day, not having sleep, all that kind of stuff. It affects people who are young and healthy, much less somebody who's old and disgusting. So here you've got this guy. If he makes it 2 years, it'll be, before they are, like I've said, pushing him around in a chair like Admiral Pike, where he answers questions with a red light and a green light, and they pretend like they speak Trump. Right? Because if he doesn't pass away fully, believe me, Maga will sit him in a chair just listening to him, and there'll be QAnon whisperers writing down his dribble means this, right? It's 2 drops of dribble.
Blinking this one eye. It means he's signaling that we're gonna have a civil war.
It means call Rosie O'Donnell a loser again. Send out a tweet, right? So that's how they'll trend. But for real, honest to God, in all reality. He's old, he's not healthy, and for all the things that they were saying about Biden, they are eminently true about Trump in every case as well, and he's starting his presidency as the oldest guy coming in, right? Right. Starts his presidency as the oldest guy ever elected, and he will turn older if he runs his whole term. He would be older than Biden when he finishes, less healthy, doesn't bike, doesn't do any of that shit, and so when that falls off, it's precipitous. And last summer, he got a taste of mortality when his ear got nicked, and I think it, for all the other things where they think it made him gave him the win. It also, I think, made him confront his mortality in a way he never has before. And he's been bullshitting about finding religion or thinking God and it was providence or whatever, and that he wants him to live. But that's coping on his part, because this is the first time. And like I said, he's a lot more like Gans in the end of 48 Hours going, I can't believe it, I got shot. This idea that he thought he was impervious to this shit before. Right. So let's say shit hits the fan and the first year can't end the Ukraine war, can't settle what's happening with Israel and the rest of the Middle East. It spirals up. Iran, Afghanistan, now run by the Taliban, and Pakistan are on the verge of a pop. So I don't know if people know this, but there have been there's been a shit ton of fighting between Iran, Pakistan, and Afghanistan around their border regions, the very place where the United States was fighting where the Taliban had receded into it and fought off people in the Pakistani militants, the hyper-Islamic militants that are there, and pushed them back so they controlled that area so they could use it to fight back in there. They were interfighting a little bit, but they've mainly driven them out. Once the Taliban moved up to Kabul and started to gentrify themselves, kind of like the PLO, or the Palestinian Authority, the Pakistani groups are more like Hamas. And so they became even more violent, and they have a revenge scheme against those guys. And that was paralleled with support from Iran or whatever. So there've been... And I'm going to talk about this probably on Wednesday with Philip Bittner, because he's been in that area. But there have been little pop-off fights that are happening like between militant groups in these areas that are growing. They used to be like one little village fighting one little village of fighters, and they're organized, but it's just this little small area, and then they kill each other and run back. Now it's contiguous. They're continuing to fight. And then the outer areas are starting to spread. So these entire border regions are lighting up, which means Iran, Pakistan, Afghanistan, all fighting. Pakistan has nukes. Afghanistan has, the Chinese and the Russians that to some degree want to protect what they have, and Iran has an alliance with with Russia, but really just, they don't have anything to push back. That's going to happen, whether it happens middle of this year or late this year, next year rather, or it happens a year and a half from now. It's gonna happen. It's already rolling. It's just gonna burst like a zit at some point, and it's gonna happen
and
during the first.
I'm sure they'll find a way to blame it on the Biden administration.
Well, here's the thing. Maybe they'll try, but it won't matter because they'll still have to deal with it somehow. It's gonna fuck up like this newfound friendship with Russia that he might try, because Putin's planes landed at fucking Dulles yesterday.
That's great.
Yeah,
awesome.
he wasn't on them.
Why don't you let him sit at the Resolute desk again?
Well, he can't because he would be arrested. Under U.S. law, he can't even come visit. But he can send like Lavrov and a couple other people over. But even they aren't coming anymore. They're not leaving the country. But he's sending over diplomatic people to park next to Trump's plane. Whatever. Point being is that that's so. Let's look at Trump. First 6 months. He's doing this huge sweep of getting, immigrants out of the country. He focuses on the states that will be all in with him, namely Texas, and then South Dakota and Wyoming, where they're all in on helping him, because it's mostly like oil fields, food preparation, largely obvious groups of people. Half the workforce gone in a day. And then you got to hire some people, and you got to pay them real wages.
And who are those people? And where are they coming from?
And the wage rises drive up inflation, because that's what fucking happens. And then his tariffs run parallel to that. And then we're only like 6 months in, and this motherfucker has dug a hole for himself based on his promises, right? What he says.
And that is only if the Senate has confirmed all of his appointments. Because he's got to get that done first. Before anything else, he's got to get all of his shitty, ridiculous, crazy, inexperienced nominees confirmed.
Well, he can have acting people. He can have
excited about that.
Agreed, but he can have acting people carry that out temporarily in a transitional phase. And the idea if they get dumped or whatever, the problem is they have to swear an ethics oath and to continue to do the job going forward. And that's some of them are having an issue with that because they will violate it. Kash Patel being one of them. But
Pete Hegseth. I mean, every single person that is connected to him, and
Hegseth I think his thing is doomed. I think Kash Patel might actually get in at this point, and that's really nuts.
He's a person who should be in custody.
The weird thing is, Trump will probably fire him within the first fucking year. That's the hilarious part.
Without a doubt. And by the way, whoever he's appointing right away, like his first chief of staff won't be his chief of staff in 6 months. His press secretaries never last. So might as well put a revolving door in the press room. Put a revolving door on every office in the White House. Because nobody sticks with him. Nobody lasts. ETTD. Every single person who used to work for him begged everybody else to not vote for him. You all don't want to listen and blah, 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 blah. And it's all an after the fact thing. So what we have to hope is, again, Republicans like Thune and Republicans in the Senate and in the House who have already said, I'm not voting to confirm that. I'm not going to pass a bill that says that. I'm not going to do that. I'm not supporting that. So, in the weeks that have elapsed since Election Day, where, we're all cycling through the Kubler-Ross stages of grief, and maybe we bounce back and forth through a couple of them again because we get setbacks. Once you get to acceptance and you see what the reality of the situation is, who is in place, who's still going to be there, who's allegedly going to stand up and fight for Democrats. I'm incredibly disappointed in the lack of Democratic leadership right now. We're not getting the right messaging from Democratic leadership at all. I'm not getting strength. They're like, well, our fight didn't end on November 5th. I'm like, really? Prove it. I don't see you fighting. I see you kind of shrugging and go, well, this is what we'll do in January. I'm like, no, this is what you'd be doing right now, and you're not. So whatever.
Well, a lot of what they're doing.
But-
Okay,
but-
to that end. Sorry, finish your thought, and then.
No, I mean, what my frustration lies with this is what we're going to do rather than this is what we're going to do right now. And it's like dribs and drabs of here's a little tiny protection. Here's a tiny thing that we're going to do. Here's a small thing. I mean, Joe Biden isn't. We've talked about this before. Joe isn't going to run with what SCOTUS is handed to him, and he's not gonna push the limits of it, and he's not going to overstep any boundaries, and he's not
Right.
going to do anything crazy ludicrous. I mean, he tested it by pardoning Hunter, and like that's something that maybe you weren't expecting him to do. I would like to see him, let's get the ERA ratified and make sure it's signed and done before you leave office. That'd be great. There are protections I'd like to see him take care of. There are things Democrats should be more vocal about right now. But if you're not going to do that, then it's going to be up to us to hold them accountable once they're all sworn in again after the 3rd, and once they do whatever they do. We have to make sure that they're always making sure that this incoming administration can't kill us. That's what
Okay.
that's what I'm hoping is the best.
I agree.
We're not
Here's what I'm
supposed
saying.
to live
Okay.
under the threat of our own government killing us. This is America. We're not
Right.
supposed to be afraid
Agreed.
of the government.
So here's
right?
what
and we shouldn't have like Nosferatu baby eating Stephen Miller anywhere near the government, or Elon Musk anywhere near the government. So anytime I can hear a Democrat and a Republican coming together to make sure that that's not going to happen, I'm going to be very supportive of that and hopeful that that's something that'll continue.
Well, advisory
because there's only going to be so much he can get away with.
Agreed. But again, Stephen Miller in an advisory position has no ability to hire and fire, has no control points. He might be an errand boy for Trump and what Trump wants to do, but he can't act on his own. And if he did, everybody would have legal recourse. That still exists. And because Trump is having to pocket people that were maggots into these kind of like relatively harmless spots, and we're not talking about the cabinet positions that need clearance, that he's putting him in an advisory position. That's what he had before. And all he can do is tell Trump a bunch of shit, and then Trump can either act on it or not, but he can't actually precipitate it. And that's, who gives it? He could do that outside. If he called Stephen Miller because he gave him an apartment at Mar-a-Lago, he could stay at it to be the same relationship and the same impact on the voters materially. So what I was saying in the kind of play out of this. So let's say my prediction is true about Trump's health and his deterioration, and whether it's 25th Amendment or an actual keelover. Okay.
Then we're stuck with Vance.
Well, that's the other thing. So and yes, he would be president temporarily, and and he would be effectively, from his popularity amongst Maga, which is on the rocks heavily. He's one of the people who's pushing for these H-1B visas. He's got an Indian wife. We're seeing like the blowback from a lot of Maga about, his accidentally open, diverse, and equitable family life that drives them a little bit crazy. They're never going to dovetail around him. They will against, behind a fucking former game show host with a trophy wife from Europe, right? And there just is no...
Or the dipshit billionaire.
He's the bag of sand. Trump is the golden idol. And there is no trade-off where the darts don't fly. And so let's just say Trump goes and we're stuck with quote-unquote Vance. Vance still has to work with the House and the Senate to get stuff passed. He has to sign it into law himself. And the maggots have to be okay with it. Or, and yet he's got to satisfy Peter Thiel and Elon Musk, he's in that camp, right?
Yeah,
and
he's going to be like...
He's got to come up with...
He's going to be like the GWB of...
Right.
This era.
Reagan. Yes, right. And how did that work out, right? So, again, and then he's got to come up with a vice president. So who the fuck is, like, what is J.D. Vance's vice presidential pick look like? Because he would have to appoint somebody, right, to be vice president.
Yeah.
Temporarily. I mean, I don't know what the rules are in that regard, but think of if he picks somebody that's totally MAGA, all that person is going to be is
you'd probably pick like Mike Johnson, because Mike Johnson, they love pushing him around. He's a very eager servant, but they don't like him or respect him. So he'll do whatever he's Mike Pence-ish, like Mike Pence adjacent. So I would say that like Mike Johnson would be, or like he'd be really malleable, and he'd be a real yes guy for them.
But
and I feel like they hang out with Mike Johnson, and if Mike Johnson doesn't ever want to leave the room first because he knows that they're all going to talk about him.
Well,
he
and
would
also
be someone like him, or someone
but
like.
for what though? Again, what does that give him? What? Yeah, the House appoints. You're right. The House appoints a vice president. That's right, because they have to do a secondary vote, kind of like the January 6th vote count. So
it would be,
and he would get a say. He would get a say in multiple people, and they would work with the administration to find somebody he can work with, and there'd be this weird kind of reality show bullshit back and forth between the two of them. But
at least it won't be Matt Gaetz.
No, it definitely won't be, because he's going to be fucked up.
And we haven't even had a chance to talk about Matt Gaetz.
Oh, we will. Getting there.
Personally delicious, all of that is, but we'll get to that in a second. Okay.
So what I was saying, okay, Mike Johnson.
Dipshit brigade here. We don't.
Right.
Here's another thing. In this situation, even with Trump still alive, I don't think it's like we have a classroom full of remedial dipshits running the country rather than just one person. It's all of them collectively. And again, I can't shake this image of them doing rails of Adderall off the Resolute desk and go, what if we made Elise Stefanik like the president of the Senate?
Yeah, right.
Just make up shit. Make up shit, because that's what they're going to do. And I don't know why anybody wants that. Because what people voted for was the full disruption of daily life in America. You voted for everything that you enjoy and all of the freedoms you've taken for granted. You just went, I don't want that anymore. I want to live in a fascist dictatorship where you tell me what to do and you take everything away from me that I love my whole life.
That's okay. Yeah, and then, but again,
that's
gorgeous. That's what
again, it's who are they going to listen to from now on? Also, when this, right?
Yep.
Who are they going to choose? Who's MAGA going to align behind when the shit really starts coming down?
Right.
Which is now.
Okay. So this is a thing, like, this is the part of that kind of trajectory you can't stop. And this is going to happen. And here's the issue. Laura Loomer escalates MAGA feud. Elon Musk using Trump to establish a monarchy. Well, guess what, dum-dum? Trump thinks there should be some kind of monarchy, or believes the president to be, in fact, a monarchy of sorts. So I don't know who the fuck you think you were on board with, but he thinks he has a royal family. That's the way he talks about his family. And so if she's like, but we're pure Americans. Sorry, MAGA was never that. Never. And it never will be. So there was they've been back and forth. She was on Bannon's War Room. And both of them have been freaking the F out about, specifically about Elon Musk right now. And that whole, it's unfortunate things have escalated. It's unfortunate that MAGA base has to sustain abuse from the richest man in the world, being called the R word and saying F you in the face, okay? Loomer replied, I do believe that this tech infiltration is the greatest threat to our country and humanity as a whole.
Shit is bad when Laura Loomer is making sense.
Yeah, sounds sane.
Right?
Right.
It's nutty. Like, we're finding this is the strangest time, because people who are big MAGA loudmouths are yelling about Elon, and people who claim to have been Democratic influencers are showing up on Fox.
There's a reason why cultists and revolutionaries often will kill the people who are most on their side, like the real true activist front, because those are the people who will see that it was bullshit from the start the quickest. And so, Cuban revolutionaries who were working for the USSR, who were actually, believed in communism, and that's how stuff was going to run. They were the first against the wall. Same thing with Mao. Like, that, you guys thought this was going to be actual communism? You guys are nuts, and you'll be a pain in the ass. So you're dead. That's how that works. And Laura Loomer is finding that out. These are the people who wake up the first because they were like, I believe in total freedom and we should have, these oligarchies and this big tech overlords and blah, blah, should not control our lives and censor us. And then as soon as they get in, he starts throttling her account. And she's like, wait a second, I thought it was going to be the upside of this coin. And like, that doesn't work, dummy. It ain't a coin. It's a fishing weight and you're on the bottom of it. That's how it works in a teardrop society. So
no, they don't need you anymore.
Nope.
That's the thing. Everybody in Trump's life is utterly disposable. And as soon as they stop serving a purpose, she helped him and his campaign until people were like, you know what? She's cuckoo bananas and she's making you look bad. Push her aside.
Yeah.
So Trump pushed her to the side. She blames Musk for that when it's actually her own fault that she got pushed to the side. And now she and Bannon are aligning because they want to stay in Trump's favor by pushing Musk out. Musk is there to stay regardless of whether Trump wants him there or not, because Putin wants him there. Yep. So, none of them should be surprised at any of this happening because they're all shitty. Shitty people are going to turn on each other. Shitty, opportunistic, selfish assholes are not your friend. They're not your friend, Laura. I don't know why you thought you could trust any of these people. And so here you are now. Wait until Steve Bannon turns on Laura Loomer, because that's inevitable. It's about your usefulness to him. And you've pledged loyalty. Strangely, he doesn't have loyalty to anybody except to Putin. He never shows loyalty to anybody he demands it from. Interesting. Yeah. All of it is weird. None of this should surprise anybody. None of this. Because anybody's the coffee boy. You're one step away from being the coffee boy. If you don't do
you're basically a Democrat. Oh my God.
Right?
And of all people, Musk is lined up to be one of these people who is always, quote, a Democrat because of electric cars and space travel and all the stuff that, like, caring about NASA and electric cars was, why people think Musk was a liberal this whole time, instead of him just from the technological first principles idea, recognizing this is the direction we're going. Just like I said with Jimmy Carter and the solar panels, he saw at the national security and economic reasons why we should start to wean ourselves off of fossil fuels, because you're going to run out one day and you better have a backup plan. And that's going to take a long time to figure out. So we better start now. That's what Jimmy Carter did, because he was a decent human being. Musk comes along a lot later and just sees the dollar signs in it, because it is obviously well along this path, and it's not gonna go, it's happening no matter what you do. The toothpaste is not going back in the tube, and we are gonna use renewables for a lot of our stuff, and nuclear and thorium and some other stuff. We're gonna move away from lithium. This is how things advance. And Musk recognized that from a financial point of view and from a power point of view, that if he gets in line with this stuff under Obama, which is why we even know his fucking name, is because Tesla got, loan guarantees under the bailout under Obama. Otherwise, we wouldn't even be talking about this fuck. And because he was in electric cars, he started getting, in line with NASA for his rocket plans. And he just bought a rocket company and then used those funds from the federal government, from the taxpayer, to build that thing up and start being the outsource. Just like, he basically took the methodology of military contractors and said, hey, you don't want to build airplanes like this in-house. You want the best and the brightest. And so we'll, Boeing and Lockheed Martin, all these stuff. And they were right to do it. It worked that way. And so he's like, why don't we just do that with space travel? Why don't we just do that with X, the fleet of electric vehicles? If I can get my electric vehicles in the United States, I don't even have to sell them to people. If I can get the federal government to match its environmental goals by filling the fleet with my electric cars. That's what his plan is. That's what he wants to fucking do.
I can't wait for him to lose his government contracts. I really can't, because I just... he shouldn't have them in the first place. And the fact where he is now, he's going to need to start divesting. If he's really going to have any role in the United States government, which he should not at all.
Right.
He should not be owning Twitter, because a member of the if you're a person who works for the United States government, I don't really think you should be controlling a social media platform. There's a lot of shoulds in all of this. But he should not have government contracts, especially when the International Criminal Court is looking at him, right? And the SEC is looking at him, and he's in financial trouble, and he's in legal trouble. And all of these fucking criminals are just sauntering into the Capitol building to meet with Congress, and they're just going to stroll into the White House on a red carpet, and it makes me feel frustrated.
Understood. But again, these people are headed for a wall no matter what they do. And
no, I understand that. It's just I wish it wasn't at our expense. It's just we're going to suffer for it.
Well,
and that's
I
the
think,
thing where everyone's
again,
like, when everyone says to Maga, I told you so, and you're going to find out.
Right.
We have to suffer for their fucking stupidity and shittery.
Look at the...
And that's unfair. But I have had more hope in the last few days watching this shit implode, because if they're so busy infighting, maybe they can't fuck with the country so much.
Well, that's exactly it. Okay, so the big story has been about these H-1B visas. And for those that don't know, the reason Musk says he backs these things is because he needs the best and the brightest programmers in the world. That we need to be able to, from all over the world, we have to bring in these like tech entrepreneurs and these high level people who understand machine learning and blah, blah, blah. And we need to hire them from outside the country because in India and China and some other places, these people exist, and Russia. And that's part of what he's saying is like, we can bring these folks in. Okay, first of all, fuck that. We have people at MIT and other places that are graduating all the time that can absolutely do this kind of work and are the best and the brightest on their level too. The difference is you can't threaten to kick them out of the country by getting rid of their fucking H-1B visa. So what he wants is workers from outside the country that are reliant on his contract to stay there so he can crack the whip. He can threaten them in the same way that people are put in sweatshops and they hold on to your passport. And if you want your passport back, you got to work this many hours. You got to work this off for me. So that's why he likes it. So fuck off with this nonsense that he wants the best and the brightest. There are people of equal credentials, equal understanding of these issues in the United States. You just have to pay them well, and you have to hire them, and you can't threaten them with losing their citizenship. And that's why he likes them. So on top of that, there was this back and forth. Trump comes out. MAGA's flipping the fuck out because Trump backed Musk in this.
Well, of course he did.
But
that's the money is money, man. He's got to stay with his money, man.
One of the things that should be very telling is because Musk is pushing this whole, and Vivek Ramaswamy came out with this shitting on American culture and saying we value prom queens over valedictorians. Again, shit that sounds like a Democratic talking point from the 90s, right? That they're pulling out, and everybody's, even this like Republican on CNN was like, somebody got shoved in a locker. They're doing like this nerd bashing around it. So Trump, but the idea is something that MAGA can latch onto, which is there's got to be, we need the best and the brightest. And so we need really smart, really white European people coming over here is the theory. That's where their thinking is. They think that's where this is coming from. Or if we're going to have Chinese and Indian people and other folks, they should be like super rich entrepreneur types, the apex of whatever that race or group is. That's what they think. Okay. Here's the problem, though. Trump's response to this back and forth and his post in support of Musk was really fucking telling. And I'm going to show it to you right now. This is what he wrote. I've always liked the visas. He told this to the New York Post in a phone interview. I have always been in favor of the visas. I have many H-1B visas on my properties. I've been a believer in H-1B. I have used it many times. It's a great program. Now, real quick. Who the fuck works at Mar-a-Lago that has to have like a genius IQ and has to have the ability to run a tech firm? Do you think they are talking about the same fucking people? When Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy talk about who they're going to bring in with the H-1B visa, do you think it's going to be a manager of the golf course adjacent to fucking Mar-a-Lago? Are you not? What are you doing? What the fuck is going on at Mar-a-Lago that you think you need an IT professional that is the top of available talent in a foreign fucking country? It isn't. He does the same thing, just on a lower level. He's got mid-level tech people or somebody in his security detail, right, that works there, that he can threaten with the loss of their visa so they don't squawk when they don't get a raise. And that's what this is about. But who the fuck thinks that there's a meritocracy in the people that Trump hires at his properties? What are you talking about? How is there anybody in the United States, especially in MAGA, and MAGA's maybe in the chat room, if you're a couple of you there, maybe you can explain to me, at at Mar-a-Lago or Bedminster or even his fucking Trump Tower or his Chicago building that needs a foreign worker of that got 2,000 on their SATs and went to Harvard on a full scholarship because they have a genius IQ and they beautiful mind everything they see? Or is it maybe, just maybe, that's how he gets them on the cheap?
And then pays them under the table so he doesn't have to pay taxes. I don't know.
Gives them benefits under the table in their own country.
He doesn't do anything within the confines of the law.
Nope.
He doesn't do anything that doesn't benefit him financially. He doesn't do anything that's on the up and up. He doesn't do anything that's good for one other human being. He has never done anything that hasn't benefited himself in one way or the other.
Yeah.
He does not know how to be selfless. He will find a corner and cut it and cut it and cut it. That's what he does. That's what he has always done. That's what he has always been.
Agreed.
He is. If you could put a game of 3-card Monte in a cheap suit, that is what he is. He is constantly moving pieces around so you don't know where anything is. Don't look over here. Don't look over here. Don't look over here. Don't look, because over here is where we're doing the real shit. That's what he has always done. He is smoke and mirrors at all times. So this shit, it's just, again, 99% of the things that he's talking about, he doesn't even understand what he's saying.
Oh yeah, so, that's in the article too. Look at this.
He doesn't understand the
Nothing.
delicacies and the intricacies of policy and all of this shit. He doesn't understand any of it. Why do you think he killed the border bill that the Democrats were trying to pass?
Check this out. Check this part out. While Trump said he employs H-1B workers, past reporting has found he employs workers under the H-2A program, which covers temporary visas for agricultural workers, which is where he gets these landscapers and golf, the people who deal with his the grass for his golf courses and whatever. And then the
housekeeping and
the H-2B program for seasonal workers in sectors such as tourism, hospitality, and landscaping. The Trump transition team did not respond to a request for comment on Saturday, which means he just brings in people and he hires foreign workers to do all the grunt work around, and
it's Six Flags.
And he gets model looking women from Europe to be his directors at all these places, to walk around as liaisons, with the at his golf courses and the like. That's what this is.
Gross.
So it's like his old modeling company. That's what that is.
Gross.
And he uses the H2B to do that.
It's all bullshit. It's like putting on another reality show. All of it is fake. Nothing. Yep. He can't ever admit to the reality of his life. It all has to be this presentation, this performative bullshittery, this just constant lies on top of lies on top of lies. And eventually it'll crumble. I don't know when. I don't know how. He's just the luckiest son of a bitch, and that he's gotten this massive protection his entire life and has never truly been held accountable. Although today he was held accountable. Right. Because thank you, E. Jean. So little moments, those are the things that are going to continue to lift us and boost us as we go forward. Because there's several things that we're going to do. First of all, we're going to watch Matt Gaetz go down. We're going to watch him go down, right? Because that report is out, and he no longer has the protection of Congress. He's not a congressman anymore. He's a regular person now. So he only has the protection of his daddy and the rich Florida men. That's not going to go that far. So we'll just see what happens with Gaetz. I feel personally vindicated that something happened to him. I reported him to the House Ethics Committee twice. I don't think my complaints are ever going to be made public, and that's fine. But it's important that there's some sort of accountability. So I'm enjoying watching that happen. At the same time, we're going to see going forward some Republicans standing up with Democrats to keep us. What does that say? Sounds like what he called black jobs. Yes. Right. Yes, absolutely. Black jobs, brown jobs, call them brown jobs, call them brown lady jobs. Black and brown lady jobs is a lot of those jobs. But going forward, what we're going to see is this continued implosion in the Republican, just in the trenches, because they're going to get really tired of losing they're not going to get anything passed.
The pushback.
They're going to have constant pushback, constant obstruction, constant questioning of everything. Like my one of my biggest, I have several huge fears about the incoming shit, but I want to see Democrats protecting our information sources above all else, because being able to trust information is incredibly important, and having the guy architect of Project 2025 in charge of the FCC is problematic. Putting Carrie Lake in charge of the Voice of America is incredibly problematic when she has 90% of Twitter blocked. So not being able to trust information is worrisome, and I'm very, very worried about what's going to happen with healthcare, the NIH, the CDC, all of that stuff. Because if RFK Jr. gets anywhere near that, it makes our country more vulnerable to a bioweapon attack. Like, that's a huge worry. So when they're heading into confirmation hearings, like I'm going to watch all of that very closely. I'm going to expect Democrats and some Republicans who are normal and not MAGA to step up and say, this is dangerous. This is deadly. This isn't just you guys going, oh, we're going to do this. You take away our basic bet. Like you want to pick and choose about the flu virus or the flu or the COVID, whatever. Polio, no.
Right.
You know, don't take away the dip-tet. Don't take away the basic vaccinations that we have been living with for decades that lets your children go to school and not die. Those are the things. You have lockjaw right now? No? You can thank your vaccination for that. So those things, we need to make sure that the American population, above all, is protected, regardless of political affiliation. I will reiterate this again. MAGA kids in the chat, I don't want you to die at all. I want you to live a full and healthy life. I don't want you losing your health care, and I don't want you going bankrupt. You know, I don't want that. And you can say what you want about Democrats, but I don't have a mean bone in my body. I don't want anyone to lose their life or their livelihoods because of Donald Trump. I really don't. I really don't. It's not just about me, and it's not just about Democrats, and not about, oh, liberal. Blah, blah, blah. Stop that. It's about us as a human race. Yeah. And, you know, look at what just happened. This week, we had Christmas Day, and at sundown on Christmas Day, Hanukkah began. I'm not a religious person, but if you want a sign from the universe that we're all supposed to get along and live in peace, there's one for you to have your alleged Jesus birthday on the day that Hanukkah starts. That's a coming together. That's the universe saying we're all supposed to want peace and live together in peace. We're supposed to want that as a country. We're not supposed to want to live churned up and angry and freaking out and scared that we're going to die every day. I don't want that for you. I don't want that for any of us. And it's my job, and it's Hal's job, and everybody in the sexy liberal universe. It's our job to keep everybody optimistic and full of some kind of hope. And I was on Bob Seska's podcast a couple of weeks ago, and it ended up being more like a mutual therapy session because we were talking about what we do. You know, it's not just about spewing. It's about what we're going to actively do. We have to be active. And there are things that we have to do. Self-care will matter. Supporting each other matters. They're not going to take anything away from us that belongs to me. You know, like you're not going to take away my joy when I go to Low Bar Corral. You're not going to take away my pride in my book and my love for it and my ability to continue to love it and promote it. You're not going to take away my joy when I see a 5-star review of my book that everybody should buy at TaraDublinRocks.com. I am almost at 950 copies. I was hoping to make 1,000 by the end of the year. If I get 950, I'll be delighted. I'm at 943 right now. So, you know, there are things that we can embrace and enjoy about living in this country and being together. And it's going to be about us staying together and united and like when we see things happening to call them out. It's still our job to do that and still our responsibility. And so when we see somebody with someone, again, it all goes down to trust and remembering who you are and who we are. And remember that Hal's never lied to you. I have never lied to you. You cannot say that we have ever tried to lead you astray. That's not Lindy Lee. I'm not Lindy Lee. Have you been following the Lindy Lee story?
Yeah, it's so weird. I met her for the first time and I was,
Where'd you meet
at Sexy Liberal. Her? She came on stage with us and I had never met her before. I wasn't even sort of aware of her until then. I had to they were like,
this
Lindy Lee's here.
Fucking skin on fire because I will tell you, and I know we're a little over, but I'm going to tell you about this. Right. Because it matters. The truth matters to me so much, and it makes me angry when people don't listen to me. Because one of my Blue Sky followers called me Nostradamus, which makes me mad that I didn't come up with that.
That's pretty great.
Because when I'm right about stuff, I'm fucking right about it. There's a million examples I could give you, but few years ago when Lindy started getting she started getting noticed.
Yeah.
And we were in a few DM rooms together on Twitter. And one thing that I noticed right off the bat is that she was stealing tweets. She was stealing the way people wrote tweets. She was stealing like the cadence and the way that they were laid out. And she was doing that. It was blatant. She was blatantly stealing tweets and people's styles. And I started like privately, I would DM people like one-on-one, be like, this is
your
what?
tweet.
That's weird. That's weird and that's wrong. And so then I learned that I couldn't trust those people either because they went right to Lindy and they're like, Tara's going around telling everybody that you're doing this. So then Lindy confronted me. She's like, hey, Tara, why are you telling people that I'm stealing tweets? I'm like, because you are. You're stealing tweets and you're doing this. And here's an example. And here's an example. And here's an example. And no one wants to believe me, but I see you. And then she started telling people that I was a racist and that I was targeting her because she's from China and she's Chinese. Never once have I commented on anybody's ethnicity. You know why? Because lies have no color. Lies are just lies. And she was lying about who she was and misrepresenting herself. And I tried to warn everybody. And I got kicked out of DM rooms. And people got mad at me because I was telling them the truth about her. And here we are now. Now she's on fucking Fox. She's on Fox News talking shit about Democrats and Joe Biden and Kamala and claiming that she was the woman's chair at the DNC. She was fucking fuck all at the DNC, okay? She wasn't the chair of shit. Even Jamie Harrison has tweeted about her saying she never had a position at the DNC.
Yeah.
She was nobody. And the fact that I have been screaming into the abyss for how long and half of MSNBC follows me back. Have I ever been on Katie Fang's show? No. Have I ever been on any MSNBC show? No. And I finally when I was finally on MSNBC's website because somebody called me out for talking about we need a recount and calling me an election denier. And there's Lindy Lee fucking lying on MSNBC to everybody. She's an opportunistic, grifting piece of shit. And here's me, just being sweet little me, telling you the truth, supporting Democrats, being me, and trying to keep everybody from being lied to and grifted. And nobody, not one person from that time has come back to say, hey, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't believe you. I'm sorry I blocked you. I'm sorry I told everybody to block you. I'm so sorry. Again, I don't talk shit. I just tell the truth. Difficult, easy, doesn't matter. The truth is the truth is the truth, whether you like it or not. The truth is, I have been telling people for years, and the people are like, she never did anything to me. And I'm just like, now she's done it to our entire party.
Right.
Okay.
Also,
I will never. There's
I'm
nothing
with you.
You can do.
I'm with you in
turn
that
on my party or turn on my country. No amount of money. None.
You can recall, maybe, perhaps, that I've been saying the same thing about TYT this whole time, and suddenly everybody's shocked.
She's all buddied up with them too.
Well, and they're buddying up.
Look at the company you keep.
Yeah,
Bye, TYT.
absolutely.
Bye. Bye.
And the fact that
you can hang out with John Fetterman. What the fuck? Anybody who's bending a knee in advance. See ya.
Look, I find, again, I leave room for people to be manipulative of someone who is easily manipulated, especially when it comes to ego and the like. And just because you're saying this stuff doesn't mean you'll vote this way. And so Fetterman's in a different box. That's how the Senate works. But that said, we'll wait. I have a wait and see about how somebody will actually vote anymore. That I'm not going to necessarily just trust them because they say the right things. If they could be saying all the right things, and then in committee they could be killing shit and you don't even know. So that's another thing in another box. But the situation with like TYT, I've been telling everybody for a long time that TYT's entire business model is the diminishment of Democratic voting. That they want that you drive voters to the Jill Steins or you just demoralize them so they don't fucking vote. And so so look at the Muslims who voted for to support Gaza by putting Trump in, who told Netanyahu that Palestinians are a cancer and you got to do what you got to do. A huge part of that messaging for those voters, they didn't get it from Fox News, they got it from TYT. Right?
Yes,
it's not a feature. It's not a bug. It's a feature. That's the point. And their whole goal and their entire method has been to make themselves an important minority to the Democratic Party, which is make the threat of losing votes real And so that's their entire methodology. Is like grind down the vote and go, hey, if I tell these people they won't vote for you and you're fucked and therefore you have to listen to me. And then they form Justice Democrats, which fucked themselves into a cocked hat and was a total waste of time. And all it did was undermine like the Democrats right as they're getting their stride on some actual good, policies and some and bills going through. So this is. It's the same thing. Lindy Lee is like a quick, like an instant noodles version, for lack of a better phrase, or instant powdered coffee version of the long game that TYT has been doing.
Yeah, no, she just went where the money. She went for an instant opportunity, wherever the opportunity was. And it's interesting because you're showing your true colors and you're out for yourself, which makes her perfect for Maga because she doesn't have any loyalty except to herself. But what's interesting is she could have stayed in the Democratic space and still been an influencer going forward if she had just chosen the position of, okay, we got knocked down a little bit, but here's how we get back up again.
Yep.
If she had taken the tub thumping approach like Joe Biden does, then no one would be the wiser that she was a lying, opportunistic grifter. But she showed her true self. And that's what TYT is doing. And that's what Joe and Mika did. And anybody else at ABC rolling over and giving him $15 million when what just happened with Eugene? They should get their $15 million back. They should absolutely get their money back now. And George Stephanopoulos should get up and go, hey, fuck you. I'm on Team Eugene. That's what George Stephanopoulos should do. Anyway, anyone who is afraid of this guy and anyone who bends a knee to this guy is a fucking coward and a spineless traitor. And you and I do not fall into that category.
We're not going to. Ever.
And we're never going to. We are never going to.
Nope.
Remember that we said this to you before the election was certified.
Right.
Remember that we said this to you before our vote was cast. Remember that Hal and I have been telling you the truth now for years and years and years because we care, not about just you individual, but the country at large, and that we understand it's not about the individual, it's about the whole. And every single American citizen is entitled to live their lives without the threat of the government fucking them up. Like, that's what this country was founded on. And the fact that you voted for someone to take away everything that makes your life livable will never make sense to me. I don't get it. I don't get voting against your own best interest out of spite, to own the libs, whatever your bullshit reason was. You're just self-owning. That's what it is. It's the biggest self-own in American history because you voted away your health care because you don't know that the ACA and Obamacare are the same thing. And you voted to pay more in tariffs because you don't understand how they work. 25% more for everything coming in from Canada and Mexico, 10% more coming in from China. What do you think that's going to do to you? Well, if you don't have a Nobel Prize, I can tell you, Nobel Prize winning economist said it's going to cost you between $4,000 and $6,000 a year. That's what you voted for. Yep. That's what happened. That's the truth. Going forward, please listen to us now. We're not going to lie to you, and we're going to help you. And so go in the first. Hal said, let's watch the first 6 months and see where we are in 6 months. Because, I want everybody should take a screenshot of where inflation is, where the price of gas is, where the price of eggs is right now, where housing prices, everything. Take a screenshot now because it's not going to be like that. It just isn't. And you're going to find, and the only optimism that I'm now finding is understanding how absolutely inept. Because last time around, he had somewhat normal people around him, your John Kellys, your people who understood how the government works, understands the processes, all of that. He didn't have that this time. He has a bunch of dipshits who have never worked in the government in their lives and have no understanding of what it's like to run any government agencies. And as we continue to watch that implode and it starts impacting the daily lives of MAGA voters, as we approach a midterm election, which we'll hopefully have, that they won't take away our elections, a midterm election in 2026 will be a landslide for Democrats. That's my greatest hope because everyone is going to see in the next 18 months or whatever how absolutely unprepared they were, how absolutely inept Republicans are in this moment. And what happens when you have a divided party leading a country is that everybody loses.
Yeah, agreed. And but again, you have to understand that that's part of the goal for folks.
Well, no, that's what they want, but I just don't understand why. I don't understand why you kill off your voting base. That just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah,
it doesn't make sense.
Well, if the goal is, because you're assuming that they're running a race and that they want to cross the finish line. If your goal is to make sure the race is scuttled entirely, then a lot of it starts to make a lot more sense. The problem is that everybody in the stands showed up thinking they were there to see a race, and that they think their person is the fastest runner, and they see people start tripping other people, or cheating to win, or running the opposite direction, or saying, I don't have to run, fuck you, then they start waking up to this stuff, and that's what's going to happen.
My issue is, what's their end game? What do they want ultimately? Because if they're trying to kill off everybody, right? It just seems like that. It's gonna be Elon and Vivek and JD sitting around the Oval Office, the three of them with Peter Thiel in a circle jerk. That's what they want. I mean, what is it that they want? An exclusive billionaire enclave of 26 people, and then the rest of the planet is gone? None of this makes sense to me. It just doesn't. What's their end game? What is it that you ultimately want here?
Of course it makes sense if you listen to them. It doesn't, it doesn't make sense if you care about humanity or any of that stuff. That's what I mean. But it makes total sense if you listen to Peter Thiel talk about eugenics. You know exactly where these fuckers are coming from. Of course that's what they believe. Elon Musk.
And white and Christian.
Listen to what Trump's been saying about genes and all this kind of shit, and like fast racehorses make fast racehorses and all this stuff. He had one conversation with Elon Musk on the road, and then was immediately just like the fucking, like, all bets were off in this, just talking about eugenics and genetic superiority and all this stuff. He started yammering about that because that's what Elon Musk talks about all the time.
All the time.
Right. Because so anyways, we're way over, but
apartheid Clyde.
Yeah.
Anybody who isn't white and male and rich, and that's none about anybody watching this show.
Yeah.
None of you.
Agreed.
Again, you and your worries about the coastal elites, and yet you elected billionaires. That's fine. Makes no sense
from New
to
York.
me, but that's you. Whatever. Anyway, speaking of not rich people, I am not a rich person. And if you would please buy my book, The Sound of Settling, a rock and roll love story, available right now at TaraDublinRocks.com. Please follow me on all of the socials. I have like no followers on Instagram. I need Instagram followers. Tara Dublin Rocks 1 on Instagram /threads.
Okay.
And Tara Dublin Rocks on the Blue Sky. And I have the Substack also. And a YouTube. I have my YouTube. Sign up for the YouTube. And then in just a couple of weeks, I'm going to start hosting the Political Voices Network's Substack 3 days a week. And I'm going to be interviewing everybody on sex. I'm going to be interviewing all the sexy liberal hosts ahead of the faux inauguration. So be on the lookout for all of that.
If it actually happens on time, which is what we will talk about next week, because I mean, you got to do paperwork. You got to do some stuff. You got to act like an adult. You got to, and they're like, well, they'll just let us do it because whatever. No, you're not the president yet, stupid.
Nope. Not how it works. Not how it works. So,
it's not even guaranteed. Do it in your office. Sign in, and take the oath in your office and fucking stand there. That doesn't mean you get the parade and the outside shit. You got work to do. It's so silly.
And anybody who's worried, make a call to your member of Congress and be like, hey, 14th Amendment's real. Just,
throwing that out there.
Saying, if you want a Hail Mary, kind of a save the country moment, say that you help stave off fascism so that there are future generations who won't ask why you didn't. Just, things like that. Anyway, I hope everybody has a wonderful New Year's Eve. If you're a single person like me, on the new website I'm writing for, neighborhoodnestle.com, where I don't write about news or politics, and I just write listicles. It's so great. It's mine just not to have to write about politics for a few hours a day.
Sure.
I did a top 10 ways for singles to enjoy New Year's, because you should not care about New Year's. It's just another Tuesday night as far as I'm concerned. So go to neighborhoodnestle.com and read all my listicles. And
jump back. I want to kiss myself. That's what
as soon as we're done, I'm going to write to 10 movies to watch on New Year's Eve, and I'm going to count them to 10, 9, 8, 7. And you'll have to read it to find out what I think the number one movie is you should watch on New Year's.
Excellent.
Look, we call that a tease in radio. Anyway,
I like it. And
my darling, I hope you have a wonderful New Year's with Summer.
I won't.
You guys make out good
Dallas.
and hard.
Here's the thing.
Do all the loving stuff.
We'll do it beforehand because I will be in Dallas with Nerd Halen ringing in the New Year's tomorrow.
That would be the only thing I would go out for.
Yeah.
If Nerd Halen was playing in Portland tomorrow, I would go out for that.
Yeah.
I would.
Again,
that would be a way.
I'm building us a rather you got to have goals to keep yourself focused on the good stuff and whatever. And I'm building Nerd Halen a rather big shoe, as we say.
Bring the shoe back up here.
Yeah,
I can hook you up with a larger
props
and better venue. By the way,
thank you. That's a good idea. And preferably one where someone doesn't pass away during sound check.
I can deliver that.
Okay, great.
I can guarantee you.
Thanks.
One of my friends in many venues. No one's gonna die on the floor before you step upon it.
All right, I'll hold you to it. All right, you're wonderful. Thank you for coming back.
Bigger and better in 2025. Okay. I
insist.
Yeah. Everybody, stay safe. Remember, just to take care of each other and be good to each other. Okay. And buy my book.
Excellent. Okay. Bye.
Bye, you guys. Take care.
There she goes, ladies and gentlemen. Tara Dublin, who does indeed rock, and has a book and all that thing and stuff. And I will see you guys this afternoon for the regular afternoon show. We will have an actual regularly scheduled show today. Now, tomorrow, I fly to Dallas, but early in the morning, so that I have a backup flight just in case. I will be missing sound check, but I'll find my way around it. And I get in, and then I may have room before our show to do a show, kind of a end of the year kind of thing with you guys, like an hour. Don't want to wear my voice out too much before I have to sing a bunch, because I got a 90-minute show to sing tomorrow night. And then I fly back on Wednesday, New Year's, and I get back at noon my time. So what I'm going to try to do is do a sort of combo afternoon show on the 1st with Philip Ittner joining me later. Now, it's later for him, so the timing might be weird. I might have to move it up to like 1 o'clock on Wednesday p.m. my time so that he can join us. I'll work that part of it out. And then after that, pretty much regular shows ongoing. Friday, I will be doing them from Los Angeles, because we're doing a Nerd Halen show on Friday night. Just a short set for like a private party kind of thing or whatever. And then Saturday, I'm going to drive back after that show. So I'll do my show from here, and then off we go. And my next Flappers gig is January 23rd at 8 p.m. It's a Thursday, I believe, and I will be staying through into I've got like, I'm going to be back and forth a bunch, but I've got to do we're doing a show on that Friday night, the 24th. I'm doing the Ultimate Jam Night, Ultimate NAM Night show. So I'll basically be there in LA like Tuesday through Saturday that week, which will be a bit crazy, but will, be like old times. And I think I have a better place to do my show from than the garage at the house. So I'm working that out. And if that's the case, it would be so much easier. And it would be, in the immortal words of Ferris Bueller, so choice. So until later this afternoon, I love you, and take care of yourself and take care of somebody else. And remember, the important thing is to not forget the kidney. Because
the kidney has a very special place in the heart.
No, it doesn't. Credits go.